All right, so let's add on. I want you to take a notice that these problems all have a different number that are being multiplied by. So we're going to be moving them to the right and to the left of the decimal based on whether we're multiplying by 1/10 or 1/100th. So if you think about 1/10 and 1/100th, that means we're making numbers smaller, so we would be going to the right. When you are multiplying by 10 or 100, we're making numbers larger, so we're going to actually be moving numbers to the left, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at our numbers here. We have 346 and 700ths times 10. 346 and 700ths times 1/10. So one of them means it's going to be getting larger, and one of them means it's going to be getting smaller. So when we multiply by 10, the number gets larger. When we multiply by a fraction, the number gets smaller. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to go ahead and write this number up here. We have 300. So I'm going to put 300 in our 100th spot, 40 in our 10 spot, 6 in our 1 spot. We have 0 tenths, and we have 7 hundredths. So for starters, we want to make this number 10 times larger. So in order to do that, when we multiply by 10, we're making it 10 times greater, means we have to move everything over and start with the thousandths, or with the 1,000. So we're going to say that this equals 3,460 and 7 tenths. So I have the exact same number. The only difference is the decimal now is going to go here, so this number is now 1,000. Okay? Now it doesn't mean we're moving the decimal to the left. The whole number is becoming 10 times larger, which is why it went from 300 to now 3,000. Okay? So what happens when we make this number 10 times smaller? So it can't be 1,000 if we're making it 10 times smaller. So we've got our number written up here. We're making it 1/10 smaller, which means we're going to go one place over. So we've got one place over to make it smaller. So instead of our decimal being here, we're going to put our decimal here, because that would go from 346 to 34. So our final answer would be 34 and 607 thousandths. So notice what we've done here. When we multiplied by a fraction, instead of 300, we now have 34. It's 10 times smaller. When we multiplied by 10, we went from 346 to 3,460. So that is just an example of how numbers, when you multiply by fractions versus a whole number. So on this next one, we're going to be multiplying by 100 and 1/100th. So one is being multiplied by a whole number, one is being multiplied by a fraction. So let's take a look at what happens to these two sets of numbers. We have 163 and 5 tenths times 100, and 163 and 5 tenths times 1/100th. One number is going to get smaller, one number is going to get larger. So I'm going to go ahead and use this chart. I'm going to write my number up here. I'm going to put my 100 in the 100th spot. My 6 is going to go in the 10 spot. The 3 is going to go in the 5 spot. And my 5 is going to go in my 10th spot. So I'm going to be multiplying the 1 by 100 first. In fact, I'm actually going to go off the chart. I want to make this 10 times 10, which means I'm going to have to move twice. So right here's my number. I want to make it 10 times larger. That's only 10. But I have to move it one more time to make it 100 times larger. So I'm actually going all the way over here to the 10,000s place. All right, so since we're moving this all the way over, everything gets moved, okay? All the numbers get moved. So 163 and 5 tenths will no longer be 163. We're going to times it by 10, and then times it by 10 one more time, which would give us to 100. So my final answer here, when I shift this over, is going to be 1, 6, 3, 5. Now I have nothing in my ones place right here. Notice I have nothing in my ones place, so I'm actually going to have to add a 0 there, and my decimal can go there, and I can turn that into a 0 also. Now I don't need this decimal, but I do need that placeholder 0, okay? So our final answer on this is going to be 16,350. So for this one here, we're going to multiply by 1/100th, which is the same thing as multiplying by 1/10 times 1/10. So this one, we're actually going to move over times 1/10 times 1/10, and that would equal 1/100th. So we're going to go ahead and rewrite this. We're going to put our 5 over here in our thousandths. Our 3 is going to go here. Our 6 will go here. And our 1 will go there. And our decimal is going to stay here. So our original number of 163 now becomes 1 and 635 thousandths. So 1 and 635 thousandths. So you'll notice that this original number of 100 is now 100 times larger. So it's 16,350. And this original number of 163 5/10 times 1/100th is now 100 times smaller. It now only equals 1. So that is how you multiply using multiples of 10.